The Life Divine, chapter The Two Negations, the Refusal of the Ascetic, and starting from page number 24. Entering into that consciousness, we may continue to dwell like it upon universal existence. Then we become aware for all our terms of consciousness and even our sensational experience begin to change of matter as one existence and of bodies as its formation in which the one existence separates itself physically in the single body from itself in all others, and again by physical means establishes communication between these multitudinous points of its being. Should I read a bit beyond to get more context?
नहीं
Okay,
ठीक है,
this is,
it's continuing from the previous one, है ना?
yeah.
So when we enter that consciousness, that one consciousness, which is जो इसमें बताया था, in the psychology of East, it has been always the aim of our subjective progress to recognize that oneness in everything, that it's the same consciousness dwelling everywhere. So entering into that consciousness, we may continue to dwell like it upon universal existence. Then we become aware for all our terms of consciousness and even our sensational experience begins to change. So your look at the world begins to change. You know, if you have that experience of that consciousness and you see, just like clay, say you are forming different forms, you know, so of matter as one existence and of bodies at its formations, like you're different forming different forms in which one existence separate itself physically. So it's only one divine which is now in different forms, it is dwelling, but the basis is one, that consciousness is one physically in the single body from itself in all others, and again by physical means establishes communication. So since that, imagine a diamond placed in each of that clay formations that you are am forming, you know? So now that diamond uses the formations of the clay, the hands, the legs, the senses, in order to establish communication between the other forms. So the senses are a door of communication, like windows of communication. और communication तो उसी one consciousness से ही हो रहा है, but it's like first you hide yourself in the form and then you establish communication through these outer limbs and, you know, the senses. So that's what feels like. And establishes again the communication, physical means establishes communication between these multitudinous points of its being, now that it has gotten separated seemingly in different forms. Yeah.
Mind we experience similarly, and life also, as the same existence, one in its multiplicity, separating and reuniting itself in each domain by means appropriate to that movement. And if we choose, we can proceed farther and, after passing through many linking stages, become aware of a super mind whose universal operation is the key to all lesser activities. Nor do we become merely conscious of this cosmic existence, but likewise conscious in it, receiving it in sensation, but also entering into it in awareness.
So I think starting from feeling lost and purposeless in the existence, you know. So this is a very one evolutionary thread only, you know, where we can reach to have the experience of that oneness first in me, and then realizing that of course it's everywhere, and through mind and also vital energies life, mind we experience similarly, and life also as the same existence, one in its multiplicity, separating and reuniting itself in each domain by means appropriate to that moment. तो जैसे मदर कहती है ना कि जो भी यहाँ पे whatever seems ugly, it's like it's just distorted version of something beautiful, है ना. जैसे what we say anger is distorted wisdom energy, for example, है ना. So if I go into anger and understand its roots, so I'll be directed to the source of anger. Or each thought, each idea that we have in mind, that's also being taken from, you know, somewhere like a domain of ideas, and I'm receiving it from there. No matter I may be, you know, completely in ignorance, but it's working. The supermind is in operation, but I don't know what's happening.
यूनिवर्सल ऑपरेशन इज द की टू ऑल लेसर एक्टिविटीज. मतलब जैसे आप बता रहे हो कि जो छोटी चीज एज एन व्हाट वी डू when we go to the root we realize that that is a universal operation, but because it has changed forms or
हाँ, डिस्टॉर्टेड, हाँ, गॉट
distorted
डिस्टॉर्टेड.
हो रहा है, तो फिर
यस.
that is the
या.
lesser activity.
Yeah, yeah. I think this would also, I can relate this with people who are maybe very energetic and aggressive, you know. Now they're, they say, or children who are very naughty, very aggressive. Now their energies are a distorted form of actually what they can channelize beautifully, you know. We
Yeah.
naughtiness, the same aggressiveness can be taken, if directed, can be taken back to its higher form.
The last line, the way it's worded, it's so beautiful. Is एक तो चीज हो गई ना, it's a superficial that you become conscious of it. That's what we are used to, right? Like I didn't know, and now I say I know. Conscious in it, receiving it in sensation, but also entering into it in awareness.
Mm. I think this is so comforting, even contemplation on this, you know. Usually we always are so afraid about ourselves and what will happen to me, my family, you know, as if we are lost in this wide universe, and we have to protect ourselves and keep ourselves safe. And if one reflects over it, जो भी ये line है last वाली, है ना, conscious in it, so you know that you are in it, है ना, as if there is this big humongous divine being and we are all in it, and now we are becoming conscious of it, receiving it in sensation, but also entering it into it in awareness. वही है कि मतलब आई फील दैट द माइंड इज सो हैबिचुएटेड टू गो द ओल्डर वेज, pathways that it has walked, as if one goes there again and then one has to redirect back to this consciousness, goes there again then redirect back, क्योंकि habituated तो वही है ना कि जो limited self है, that I have to protect myself and I can be harmed, वो सब it is so ingrained, we go back the drain again and again.
In it, we live as we lived before in the ego sense, active, more and more in contact, even unified more and more with other minds, other lives, other bodies than the organism we call ourselves, producing effects not only on our own moral and mental being and on the subjective beings of others, but even on the physical world and its events by means nearer to the divine than those possible to our egoistic capacity.
So I think I can also relate this with जैसे ये बात करते हैं ना, awakening of the bodhicitta in us,
Mm.
and cultivation of, say, kindness, compassion. You know, it's all I feel it's included here, that the more we live in that consciousness, the more I cannot help but know myself as the other beings around me, you know? So you get more sensitive, although it's still living in ego sense. In it we live as we lived before in the ego sense, active, more and more in contact, even unified and more with other minds. So whatever is happening in the other being, you become more sensitive to it, you know what is happening, you know, you take it as your own, since you are not considering now yourself as a separate limited entity, other lives, other bodies than the organism we call ourselves, producing effects not only on our own moral and mental being and on the subjective being of others, but even on the physical world. Whether the capacities one may have
Mm.
पहुँचे ना पहुँचे वो अलग बात है, but the possibilities, but even on the physical world and its events by means nearer to the divine than those possible fit with our egoistic capacity. So living as a separate, limited, suffocated being, what my capacity is, and living as that consciousness, connected with more and more people, more understanding, you know, and even having ability to exert effect on the physical world.
These two, three words, that the organism we call ourselves. The when do I call myself an organism? है ना, मतलब जैसे यूजुअली as soon as I read it, like मुझे अमीबा और ये सब जो पढ़े थे ना, वो याद आ गए कि मेरे लिए तो वो ऑर्गेनिज्म है और मैं, आई एम द होल वर्ल्ड. So very interesting again to just
Hmm.
call myself out on that.
Hmm. I think the reference is to the body. जब organism की बात करते हो तो you refer to the body, तो
Hmm.
है ना, whenever we are limited that this is
Hmm.
my body, how dare you, whatever, you know, not protect it, or जो,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But जैसे other bodies than the organism we call ourselves. तो
Hmm.
फिर
Hmm.
माई, हाँ, मतलब थोड़ा ऐसा लगा मुझे कि
हाँ.
मेरी बॉडी.
Yeah.
या
So
रियल देन, सॉरी.
नहीं, ये जो इसके नीचे एक लाइन है ना, कि producing effects not only on our own moral and mental being, मतलब how effective, है ना, क्योंकि we are always looking at our effectivity, how efficient I am, है ना, how effective one can become, that our, we always, again paradoxically, ईगो सेंस में भी जब हम रहते हैं तो मोस्टली यही लगता है ना कि हाउ टू फिक्स अदर्स, हाउ टू कंट्रोल अदर्स इन अ डिग्रेडेटरी सेंस. बट यहाँ पे ये है कि द सेम कैपेसिटी आई एम गेटिंग if I do the effort of uniting with that higher consciousness, that my limits will be expanded, you know. But somehow, क्योंकि उसमें effort भी है, and then I have to let go of my limited ego sense, तो मन नहीं करता.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Real then to the man who has had contact with it or lives in it is this cosmic consciousness with a greater than the physical reality, real in itself, real in its effects and works. And as it is thus real to the world, which is its own total expression, so is the world real to it, but not as an independent existence. For in that higher and less hampered experience, we perceive that consciousness and being are not different from each other, but all being is a supreme consciousness. All consciousness is self existence, eternal in itself, real in its works, and neither a dream nor an evolution.
I think इसमें एक चीज़ आई एम एबल टू कनेक्ट, जैसे आई वॉज टॉकिंग अबाउट रूपर्ट स्पायरा बिकॉज ही टॉक्स अबाउट दिस, ही यूजेस द वर्ड अवेयरनेस, नॉट कॉन्शियसनेस, बट इट्स रेफरिंग टू वन एंड द सेम. तो उसमें वो यही बोलता है कि यू डोंट हैव द एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ नॉट नोइंग. जैसे हम उस दिन बात कर रहे थे ना कि नाउ आई डोंट नो whether Jupiter exists or not, but the Jupiter exists for other people, है ना. So we can't have that experience of not knowing, not being consciousness, since here he says that the world is real precisely because it exists only in consciousness. मतलब उसके अलावा है क्या, जैसे कहते हैं ना, there is only परमात्मा and there is nothing else. So apart from consciousness there is nothing else, because we can't ever see the end of consciousness. Because जैसे ही आप end of consciousness पे पहुंचोगे, then there would be something which will be aware, okay, this is the end of consciousness. And what is that? So there we can never have that experience of, okay, this is where consciousness ends. Because when I'm saying by its effect, है ना, जैसे जैसे मैंने बोला कि this is where consciousness ends. Now who is this who is watching that, okay, consciousness ends here? Again consciousness has to be there for that. तो तभी
Yeah.
जैसे बात बार बार ये, इवन इन जैसे हिंदू मिथोलॉजी और हिंदी स्पिरिचुअल लिटरेचर, जैसे सिर्फ परमात्मा है और कुछ नहीं है. देर इज कॉन्शियसनेस एंड नथिंग एल्स.
आई थिंक थोड़ा सा सिमिलर ये विटनेसिंग का भी आता है ना, कि देख रहा हूँ, विटनेस इज लुकिंग एट द विटनेस एंड विटनेस इज सीइंग, ओके, दैट द विटनेस इज विटनेसिंग.
हम्म.
सेम चेन काइंड
या
ऑफ.
या या.
This thing is all clear.
हम्म.
I mean, what not clear, but yeah, I mean, still. But ये जो है neither a dream nor an evolution. So dream, मतलब consciousness is not a dream nor an evolution. As in, it's already all complete,
या
right? It's
या.
not in stages. वो तो different हम है stages पे.
हाँ
But
हाँ.
yeah, जैसे
या एब्सोल्युटली.
परमात्मा, yeah,
यस.
is not. Yeah,
So it's
okay.
like consciousness is all powerful, all knowing, all pervading, all intelligent. But
Mm.
as I am operating from ignorance, so it's like layers have to be dropped off so that I have the full realization of that consciousness. It's not that the consciousness is evolving
Mm.
itself, but layers of ignorance are being dropped off, so that one has, that's why, I think the word self realization, so it's not self evolution usually that is used in a spiritual literature mein. We use self realization, that I realize who I am, because मेरी realization पे ही पर्दा पड़ा हुआ था. बुद्धा नेचर की बात करते हैं जैसे, सो बुद्धा नेचर इज ऑल नोइंग, ऑल परवेडिंग ना, बट so long as the layers of ignorance remains, I'm not aware of that. And the parda of ignorance is coming from three pardas are there, they say: mind, life, and the physical reality. So the parda of thought, the parda of emotions, and the parda of physical reality. When that kind of shatters, then I have realization of who I truly am. So when I have this realization, for in that higher and less hampered experience, when even, to a lesser or greater degree we open up to that consciousness, I realize, we perceive that consciousness and being are not different from each other, because we realize that without consciousness, no content of consciousness can be there, no thought can be there if not for consciousness, no feeling can be there if not for consciousness. Again, same for physical reality, no sensation can be perceived if not for consciousness, so they're not different from each other. So when I talk about content of consciousness and consciousness, in talking they appear different, कि ऐसा लग रहा है duality है ना, there is one thing which is perceived and then there is the perceiver, but actually में there is no existence of the perceived without the perceiver, है ना. But all being is a supreme consciousness. All consciousness is self existence, eternal in itself, never born, never dies, real in its works, and neither a dream nor an evolution. Yeah. And I think this is why, जैसे होता है ना कि काफ़ी कुछ कुछ स्टेजेस पे जब हम वी जैसे अर्लियर वी वर रीडिंग, पता नहीं किसमें पढ़ रहे, इसमें पढ़ रहे थे, दैट वन या सावित्री में देयर वाज दिस पॉइंट that whether I'll be absorbed in the unseen silence, unknowable silences, or whether I proceed to the city of God, it will be decided later or revealed to me later. So when we are absorbed in these silences of consciousness, which is again one poise, as Sri Aurobindo says, iski ek poise hai, this still poise is just a poise of consciousness. There is much more to it. So I can just get stopped there, settle, get settled in that nirvana, stillness. जैसे रमन्ना महर्षि की बात करते हैं, he was absorbed in that silence. Yeah, so we perceive that consciousness and being are not different from each other. Either I can stop at that stage, or I can proceed, and even in the beingness and the becoming, I can have that realization of, again, that same consciousness, divine consciousness. But all being is a supreme consciousness, all consciousness is self existence, neither a dream nor an evolution. Like, काफ़ी, again, if we reflect, take time to reflect over it, मतलब बार बार ये realization that it's only that we have to become conscious of the pardas and let go of them, मतलब our identification with them. मतलब तभी शायद कहते हैं ना कि कुछ करना नहीं है ना. आई थिंक मे बी इन दैट सेंस दे रेफर टू इट. बट करना तो खैर एफर्ट इज ऑल्सो देयर, बट वॉट द ट्रेजर दैट इज केप्ट सेफ, मतलब उसमें कुछ नहीं करना है, बट layers of ignorance that have to be let go of, उसमें काम है.
The world is real precisely because it exists only in consciousness, for it is a conscious energy, one with being that creates it. Yeah. It is the existence of material form in its own right, apart from the self illumined energy which assumes the form. That would be a contradiction of the truth of things, a phantasmagoria, a nightmare, an impossible falsehood.
हम्म। तो मतलब अगर मैं बोलूँ कि दैट मटेरियल फॉर्म एग्जिस्ट सेपरेटली, एंड इट जस्ट नो लेना देना विद consciousness, it is the existence of material form in its own right apart from the self-illumined energy which assumes the form, that would be a contradiction of the truth of things. A phantasmagoria, अभी मैं पढ़ रही थी क्या है ये, phantasmagoria was a form of horror theater that used one or more
And
magic lanterns to
oh,
project frightening images. So
मतलब
like
ये
a project.
फैंटम से शायद कुछ रिलेशन हो ना,
हम्म।
फैंटा, आई डोंट नो।
हाँ हाँ। So I think phantom जब भी यूज करते हैं, it is again something coming from hallucination. जैसे वो phantom hand वाला सुना है आपने, phantom hand? तो उसमें भी मतलब it's not there but I feel it is there.
I worked with patients having that problem. It's very
Yeah.
strange
हम्म।
and very real है ना, मतलब लिम्ब है नहीं और उसमें दर्द हो रहे हैं, मतलब इट्स जस्ट
फैंटम पेन कहते हैं ना इसको।
फैंटम पेन बोलते हैं।
व्हाट ऑल इज पॉसिबल मैन।
हाँ,
अब देखो आप कि जब ये हो सकता है
हाँ,
तो जो हमारे दिमागी दर्द हैं, मतलब
हम्म,
अराइजिंग फ्रॉम माई थॉट्स माई स्टोरीज, है ना, मतलब वो भी
हम्म,
कितने रियल अपीयर करते हैं।
बिल्कुल। And it's, I mean, again, I don't know, it's more of a happening than a doing because you say it's not there, you can see it's not there yourself, and then yet even communicating say to a therapist कि बट मुझे इसमें दर्द हो रहा है और मुझे पता नहीं है ही नहीं, है ना, मतलब इट्स वेरी जैसे कहते हैं सिंबॉलिक है ना भाई, जैसे आप मेंटल पेन की बात कर रहे हो इसके
सो
साथ
हाउ
में।
वुड वन गो थ्रू इट, जो आपका एक्सपीरियंस है अबाउट द फैंटम पेन, व्हाट डू यू, हाउ डू यू डील विद इट?
काफी सारी टेक्निक्स होती थी। एक तो रेगुलर जैसे आई थिंक कुछ ये होता था कि जब वो हील हो जाता है ना, बिकॉज यहाँ पे स्टिचेस और वुंड्स होते हैं ना, तो बेसिकली डिपिंग इट इन से अ लिटिल कोल्ड वाटर, हॉट वाटर, ऐसे करके मतलब डिफरेंट सेंसेशंस दे के, कि एज एन जैसे पेन हो रही है बट अब जैसे ठंडक हो रही है तो ठंडक पड़ रही है ना, मतलब क्या होता है व्हाट आई फील इज के, एंड आई शुड नॉट बी सेइंग दिस बट आई एम स्टिल सेइंग दिस के, एक जैसे कहते हैं ना कि नर्व इम्पल्स की पेन की वो हो जाती है ना, लाइक
हैबिट।
समटाइम्स हैबिट, या फिर एक नर्व पेन देना बंद नहीं कर रही होती, दैट इज ऑल्सो पॉसिबिलिटी बिकॉज रिमेम्बर समटाइम्स वी से दैट, है ना, लाइक मदर सेज, आई डोंट नो कहाँ पे ये पढ़ा था कि you can go and say this to the pain na कि okay I have understood that something is wrong, thank you for letting me know and now you can stop telling me, है ना? तो आई थिंक ये ट्रॉमा बॉडी के इस उस पे स्तर पे लेवल पे इट्स सच a huge thing for a limb to be amputated. आई थिंक वो जो एक हाइटेंड वो नहीं होता नर्व का कि ओ माय गॉड है ना,
Hmm.
that, तो that has to be calm, okay, all right. So I
Hmm.
think psychotherapy, meditation really helps, breathing exercises really help के moving beyond, I think at a level है ना कि हो गया है ना, मतलब अब, yeah. And when actually ना उस ही वून को हील होने में भी टाइम लगता है,
Hmm.
जब वो हील नहीं होता ना, यू कैन नॉट डू मच एक्सेप्ट बेसिक एक्सरसाइजेस, बिकॉज जब स्प्लिंटिंग वगैरह हो जाती है, एज इन कि वो जब नॉट स्प्लिंटिंग बट हाँ वही जो फॉल्स हैंड्स वगैरह जब लगते हैं ना, देन इट गेट्स इजियर बिकॉज देन
Hmm.
है ना एक स्टिमुलस मिल रहा है, कुछ हो रहा है और ये सब, बट उस दौरान की स्टेज में
Hmm.
बिफोर समथिंग कैन बी डन टिल व्हेन इट हैपेंड, वो जो पूरा है,
Hmm.
या
वैसे काफ़ी ग्राउंडिंग फील्ड ऑफ वर्क है, नहीं मतलब
कि
वो।
मुझे काफी ना, मेरे को मतलब अगेन आई डोंट नो इफ इट्स a conversation for, maybe we can talk
हम्म,
about,
हम्म,
yeah,
हम्म,
when I learned about it I
हम्म,
really liked it,
हम्म,
but yeah it just fell through the cracks for me, mainly because also because of the college and the way it was taught, matlab,
हम्म,
or the way I perceived it.
हम्म,
Let's go with that.
हम्म।
Yeah, ठीक है. But this conscious being, which is the truth of the infinite supermind, is more than the universe and lives independent. Yeah, where am I stuck? Independently in its own expressible infinity as well as in the cosmic harmony. I'll just read it again. But this conscious being, which is the truth of the infinite supermind, so this conscious being is more than the universe and lives independently in its own inexpressible infinity as well as in the cosmic harmony. World lives by that does not live by the world. And as we enter into the cosmic consciousness and be one with all cosmic existence, so we can enter into the world transcending consciousness and become superior to all cosmic existence. And then arises the question which first occurred to us, whether this transcendence is necessarily also a rejection. What relation has this universe to the beyond?
इसको उससे रिलेट कर सकते हैं। सो व्हेन फॉर एग्जांपल वी आर बिकमिंग अवेयर ऑफ कंटेंट ऑफ आवर अवेयरनेस, है ना, जैसे थॉट्स आर देयर, ओके, फिजिकल सेंसेशंस में बी देयर, a few moods, feelings may be there. But that awareness, and that's why Jitsumna would say spacious, open, spacious awareness, always she uses this word. This awareness is always vaster than the content of the awareness. So the consciousness is, but this conscious being, which is the truth of the infinite supermind, is more than the universe. So universe would be the manifested one. So it's always more. The awareness is always more than the contents of awareness and lives independently in its own inexpressible infinity, open spacious awareness, as well as in cosmic harmonies. So यहाँ पे वो मुझे लगता है वो वाला aspect आ जाता है when Mother Sri Aurobindo talk about that transcendental divine, cosmic divine and the individual divine. So individual divine is the Godhead present in us. अगेन जैसे कहते हैं परमात्मा का अंश, है ना, एंड देन कॉस्मिक डिवाइन इज द कॉस्मिक बीइंग, कॉस्मोस जो भी मैनिफेस्टेशन है, And yet it doesn't stop there. And then there is transcendental, which is even beyond the manifestation. So that consciousness doesn't depend on the existence for it to exist. अब यहाँ पे मेरे को बात याद आती है इनकी, जब ये गॉड पार्टिकल की बात होती है, देवर इन फ्रांस, यू नो, इन द बॉर्डर ऑफ फ्रांस एंड स्विट्जरलैंड, दे वुड सर्न करके एक वो था मेरे ख्याल से institute, where they were trying to find a god particle. And what according to them is a god particle? A particle which generates consciousness. सोच के देखो. So the particle comes first, consciousness comes later. This is the premise, है ना. अब अगेन काफ़ी डिस्कशन इस पे करते हैं लोग, और it can never happen, है ना. मतलब people coming from spirituality, consciousness so comes first and matter comes later. It is consciousness which is responsible for the matter, not matter which is responsible for the consciousness. So काफ़ी मतलब आई थिंक डिबेट्स वगैरह भी हो चुकी हैं इस पर, मुझे नहीं पता ज़्यादा, बट दिस मच मतलब आई ऑफन think that how much our arrogance should be. Again, it has a purpose, definitely, because it is taking us to the extreme of the matter also. So again, everything has a purpose. But how arrogant I need to be that I'm saying that there must be a particle responsible for generation of consciousness, and I will have that particle, you know, I will get hold of that particle. So ye again lives independently in its own inexpressible infinity as well as in cosmic harmonies. The world lives by that. So that comes first, world comes later. That does not live by the world. So when we talk about that, when we are meditating and we are taking stance as the awareness, open awareness, तो हमें काफ़ी बार ये लगता है कि ओ आई एम नोबडी, because we are so used to being identified as the thought, as the feeling, as the sensation, कि अगर हमको वो थोड़ी देर के लिए स्टिल पड़ जाता है कंटेंट, तो हमें लगता है अरे कुछ है ही नहीं, because we are not used to being identified as that awareness. And we also many a times we refer to that stage as dumbness, if you have, you know, maybe noticed that, because there is no active thought in that state, there is no active feeling in that glimpse that we get, just staying as this open awareness. तो उसमें एक डमनेस की भी many a times we can relate with that. So just like he's saying that, just like we can identify ourselves with the cosmic consciousness, the cosmic manifesting consciousness, we can also identify it with the transcendental consciousness. वो भी हमारी possibility है. So starting from the psychic realization, recognition of the divine within, recognition of the divine without, cosmic, and the recognition or identification with the transcendental consciousness. That is who I am. We can enter into world transcendent consciousness and become superior to all cosmic existence. So taking that stance is also a possibility. आई थिंक अभी तो जैसे कहते हैं ना कि लाइफ टाइम्स ऑफ वर्क पेंडिंग, अभी तो छोटी सी मैं से ही नहीं निकल पाते है ना. अभी उसको क्यों मिल गया, मेरे को क्यों नहीं मिला, अभी तो यहीं पे अटके हुए हैं. उसके साथ कुछ अच्छा हो रहा है, मेरे साथ नहीं हो रहा है ना. मतलब or even on spiritual path, no matter how many years may pass, even there amazingly to see, witness it happening, that even there it can happen that why something more spiritual is happening there and why not with me. है ना. सो आई एम स्टिल ट्रैप्ड इन मी. वो मीननेस नहीं गई, मतलब तो वो बेसिक क्रक्स ऑफ द मैटर ही चेंज नहीं हुआ. दिखता ही नहीं है ये, है ना. कभी कभी इतनी ब्लाइंडनेस है, दिखती ही नहीं है ये, कि ये भी वी आर, आई एम स्टिल कैरिंग दैट. एंड इफ समबडी पॉइंट्स इट आउट, आई मे एक्चुअली फील हर्ट. दैट्स ऑल्सो अ पॉसिबिलिटी.
उस हिसाब से बुद्धिज्म में बहुत इनिशियल स्टेजेस पे दिस कम्स है ना, मतलब दे
बिल्कुल.
हैव
या.
रिकॉग्नाइज्ड इट एंड पॉइंटेड इट,
हम्म.
देख लो.
हम्म.
Yeah. And even here where it says word lives by that and that does not live by the word. I was just thinking that how they say कि जैसे बाइबल है, गीता है, मतलब भगवत गीता, इसमें भी whoever is reading उसके बेसिस पे सीक्रेट्स निकलते हैं, है ना. मतलब इफ यू आर नॉट देयर तभी वो
हम्म.
समझ ही नहीं आएगा कि कैन नॉट गो इनटू बैड हैंड्स.
हम्म.
अदरवाइज मैं ये पढ़ लूं बस वर्ल्ड लिव्स बाय दैट एंड दैट डज नॉट लिव बाय द वर्ल्ड एंड आई से अरे लाइफ डिवाइन में लिखा है, मतलब भागो यहाँ से, है ना. मतलब
हम्म.
एज इन दैट ग्राउंडेडनेस, दैट है
हम्म.
ना, मतलब टू रियलाइज के because one can just pick it and say हाँ session over, right. Now I know. And yeah, कि हर टाइम पे कितनी ग्रेस चाहिए टू बी tethered to wherever we need to be tethered to.
बट आपको नहीं लगता कि दैट इफ देर इज एनी डिग्री ऑफ अ ट्रू रियलाइजेशन, है ना,
Hmm.
सो वन वुड ऑल्सो रियलाइज द टास्क अहेड, है ना, दैट
Mm-hmm.
if now I have that capacity and consciousness, then
Mm-hmm.
now is the stage to act on the world. पहले
Mm-hmm.
तो I'm so limited, so suffocated in my consciousness. But now that I've gained that power and that consciousness, isn't now the time to act upon
Yeah.
the world?
Yeah. And still, I mean, don't know about where who is, but lot of times,
Mm.
a lot of, I would say maybe spiritual leaders have seemingly turned, taken a U-turn, है ना, मतलब
Mm.
something just hits and
Mm.
it's like for some reason or the other.
Yeah. एक्चुअली वो डॉन्टिंग बहुत ज़्यादा है ना. आई थिंक आप
Yeah.
सावित्री में अगर देखेंगे तो सावित्री टर्न्स ऑफ ऑल द रियलाइजेशन. शी सेज नहीं चाहिए, नहीं चाहिए, नहीं चाहिए,
Mm-hmm.
मतलब क्योंकि उसको
Mm-hmm.
अपने लिए चाहिए ही नहीं.
चाहिए.
और इसी
Yeah.
में आप वो बिल्कुल रेजोनेटिंग इज द बोधिसत्व पाथ, कि मेरे को अपने
Mm-hmm.
लिए नहीं चाहिए, मतलब मेरे को नहीं चाहिए अपने लिए खुशियाँ. तो उसमें बार बार ही हो जाता है, इट सेट्स माई अलाइनमेंट प्रॉपर. जैसे वाई एम आई मेडिटेटिंग टूडे, वाई, बिकॉज मेनी टाइम्स वन कैन गेट बोर्ड विद द मेडिटेशन, है ना, कि आज क्यों बैठूँ, आज नहीं बैठती. बट देन इफ वी हैव दैट इनर कंपस सेट राइट, okay, why am I meditating today? Not for myself only. There's something more lying ahead. तो फिर वो बार बार सेट हो जाता है दैट ओके. दैट सुनमा शेयर दिस ड्रीम, इफ यू रिमेम्बर, दैट वो एक बड़े से
Prison dream.
प्रिजन
हाँ
वाली,
हाँ
है ना.
हाँ. The book में भी
या.
था. Yeah.
हाँ. हाँ.
The only thing that kept her going was that I had to run for
या.
them,
या.
two
या.
people
हाँ.
who came with her. Yeah.
तो इसमें आई थिंक इवन इफ वी डू अवर डेली प्रैक्टिस, चाहे जो भी
Yeah.
रैंडम प्रैक्टिस और डेली डिसिप्लिन प्रैक्टिस, तो उसमें भी टू हैव दैट मोटिवेशन, है ना,
Yeah.
कि ओके, वाई एम आई ओवरकमिंग जेलसी, वाई एम आई
Yeah.
ओवरकमिंग एम्बिशन,
Yeah. Yeah.
नॉट,
Yeah.
आई डोंट वांट टू डू इट फॉर माई सेल्फ.
Yeah. Even Eat, Love, Rage, वो एक basic fiction novel, although it was a real life experience, it was said that if I do something, say if I conquered anger, for example, it means that there's less of that in the world, है ना. So that's something that you have given, like you have made the world light in your own way, and it matters, matlab
बिल्कुल.
everything counts, and to get yourself out of the way. Yeah. Even Buddha's documentary shows कि how he was offered, है ना, so many of siddhis and stuff, and he just, yeah. आई थिंक वो एक टेम्पटेशन भी एक फाइनल वो हो गई है ना कि बिगर देन लाइफ, है ना कि यू
हम्म।
कैन।
So I think now maybe he's talking about this, that if one rises to the transcendental consciousness, is that also a rejection of the world? What relation has this universe to the beyond?
For at the gates of the transcendent stands that mere and perfect spirit described in the Upanishads, luminous, pure, sustaining the world but inactive in it, without sinews of energy, without flaws of duality, without scar of division, unique, identical, free from all appearance of relation and of multiplicity, the pure self of the Advaitins, the inactive Brahman, the transcendent silence.
So this would be the intermediate silence. जो सावित्री में भी which we were reading towards the end, book 1 canto 4, उसमें ये था कि whether one would be absorbed in the rapt silences and it is just a passing stage. That's what he is sharing, that there is more to realize even after that. इसके आगे आप पढ़ोगे ना, उसमें आ रहे हैं.
And the mind, when it passes those gates suddenly, without intermediate transitions, receives a sense of the unreality of the world and the sole reality of the silence, which is one of the most powerful and convincing experiences of which the human mind is capable. Here, in the perception of this pure self or of the non being behind it, we have the starting point for a second negation, parallel at the other pole to the materialistic, but more complete, more final, more perilous in its effects on the individuals or collectives, that hear its potent call to the wilderness, the refusal of the ascetic.
So when one has the experience, this most powerful and convincing experience of this non-being or the silence, he's sharing that experiencing that in this human life, I can actually render all the material existence as kachada and not required. The second negation. So we have the starting point for a second negation. Amazing वैसे कैसे describe करते हैं सच्ची. As if he is like, definitely whether he is going through all these and more than all this. So he's able to see the larger and larger and larger picture. So, and the mind, when it passes through those gates, suddenly, without intermediate transitions, receives a sense of unreality of the world. कि भैया ये क्या, ये मैं कहाँ कचड़े में पड़ा था. And the sole reality of that silence, which is one of the most powerful and convincing experiences of which the human mind is capable. Here, in the perception of this pure self or of the non being behind it, we have the starting point for a second negation, parallel at the other pole to the materialistic, but more complete, more final, more perilous, so more dangerous in its effect on the individuals or collectivities that hear its potent call to the wilderness, the refusal of the ascetic कि भैया वो छोड़ के आ जाओ जंगल में, है ना, वो सब माया है. So yeah, how he describes it, collectivities that hear its potent call to the wilderness, creating एक इमेज जैसी क्रिएट हो रही है. वैसे वेरी अमेजिंगली बुद्धिज्म की जो चीड़ फाड़ करी है, ऐसा लगता है, यू नो, इसमें नॉट चीड़ फाड़ इन दैट सेंस, हार्शर सेंस, बट मतलब it appears क्योंकि बुद्धिज्म गेव एन अपीयरेंस दैट समथिंग एल्स. लेकिन अभी समहाउ विथ कंटेम्प्रेरी बुद्धिज्म मेरे को तो कहीं से अभी तक, यू नो, मे बी माई ओन इग्नोरेंस, बट मेरे को अभी तक कहीं भी ये लग नहीं रहा कि इट इज रेजिस्टिंग द फ्लो ऑफ इंटेग्रल योगा. मेरे को ये लग रहा है कि इट्स हेल्पिंग मी मूव फॉरवर्ड. यू नो, जैसे आप बता रहे थे स्टार्टिंग, इवन द स्टार्टिंग इज दैट नो योर सेल्फ एज अवेयरनेस. You are not these disturbing emotions. So again, transforming all those disturbing emotions, they are foreign to our nature, they are not true to our nature. तो वो सारा तो एज इफ इट्स अ वेरी ब्यूटिफुल बिगिनिंग फॉर द इंटेग्रल योगा. तो इसमें बीच बीच में ऐसा लगता है कि बुद्धिज्म इज टेकन इन दैट सेंस दैट, यू नो, इट डिड समथिंग विच वॉज नॉट राइट, which again may be just a perception, but appears like that again and again.
Yeah. I was also very surprised that once, I don't know, there was this young guy who was a priest, and he mentioned something that, jo uh, Shankaracharya, I think, had spoken very strongly against Buddhism, and he used really harsh words, कि उनको खदेड़ के निकाल दिया हमने, like after Shankaracharya pointed, and I was so surprised. And in a way, I remember that I really respected that guy for, I used to admire his thoughts and what he shared, but the way he said it, like it felt as if we don't know and we are just saying, है ना, मतलब I don't know क्या हुआ होगा. It doesn't make sense to
You
me.
know,
That's
एक चीज जो one it once it got clarified for me, maybe from Tignathan and also from Tenzin Palmo, was that when Buddhism talks about non-being, that there is no self, anatman, है ना?
mm,
So actually, it is not talking about that there is no nothing here. It is talking about no separate self here.
mm-hmm,
So when you try to find out the
mm-hmm,
little separate individual
mm-hmm,
entity which is
mm-hmm,
irrespective of all, that you never find. So Tignathan इसको इस तरीके से describe करते हैं that we are all interconnected and each
mm-hmm,
particle of me cannot exist without that interconnection that we have. You know, so I am part of this water, I am part of this cloud, I am part of this soil. So in that sense there is no separate self. लेकिन मुझे लगता है
mm-hmm,
कि हाउ मे बी इट इज मिसअंडरस्टूड दैट एज इफ दे आर सेइंग दैट देयर इज नो बीइंग, देयर इज नॉन बीइंग, but while they what they are saying is there is no separate self in that sense. So Tenzin Palmo had cleared that when they are saying that there is no separate self, so sorry, there is no being, uh, or the supreme understanding is the selflessness, you know, something like that, that it doesn't mean that there is no self, supreme self in that sense. It just means that there is no separate self there in which I believe again and again that I am this separate entity and rest all can exist.
Yeah, but and yet it seems strange that why again a Shankaracharya would not, और ऐसा लगता है कोई बात कुछ और होगी, पॉपुलर कुछ और हुई है, देयर इज अ वेरी बिग चांस ऑफ दैट। या आगे पढ़ो। हाँ? It is this revolt of spirit against matter that for 2000 years since Buddhism disturbed the balance of the old Aryan world has dominated increasingly the Indian mind. So it is this revolt of spirit against matter that for 2000 years has dominated increasingly the Indian mind.
So I think referring to जैसे knowing that life is suffering, why would you
Mm,
like to indulge in that? So I think मुझे लगता है, मतलब अगेन वही जो आप भी कह रहे थे कि कुछ नहीं पता लार्जर पिक्चर क्या है, क्या चीज़ what got
mm,
misunderstood. बट ऐसा
mm,
लगता है कि इट केम एज अ रिफ्यूजल ऑफ द लाइफ दैट इज देयर, बिकॉज इफ लाइफ इज सफरिंग, वाई टू इंडल्ज योर सेल्फ देयर, कम
mm,
हेयर टू द नॉन बीइंग विच इज निर्वाणा. इट अपीयर्स लाइक
mm,
दैट, बट अभी जो भी हम पढ़ रहे हैं, वट एवर वी आर लिसनिंग टू इन बुद्धिज्म, it somehow never pointed towards this, that if life is suffering you have to abandon life. In fact, what I have seen in Buddhism है ना, what Tenzing Palmo portrays in Buddhism is perfection of the being, है ना. So
mm,
cultivate positive qualities and to let go of disturbing emotions, to let go of the separate self, which appears very much in alignment with integral yoga. मतलब उसमें कोई
mm.
मुझे हाँ
Yeah,
contradiction नहीं दिखता.
I think integral yoga bhi, if you talk to a Vedantic person, say if I speak to my dad, he feels it's a bit fishy. You know, it feels that because the Vedas have said something, the Upanishads have said something, this is it. But I think it's also a limited understanding with which we have understood the Vedas and Upanishads. Na? Like they say, a new dawn. You know? But we are so used to our nights or our lamps or our bulbs that we are not open to new. है ना? जब भी something new is shown or propagated, there's always the doubt, right? कि नहीं 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 नहीं, this is not it. वही है ना? मतलब because a lot has been used for cheating or misguiding, right? So we are so, but how will we move ahead if we don't let go, right? And yet that letting go is sitting on such high names and sources, or misunderstandings, not mis, but limited understandings that, yeah.
एंड ये जो monk monk और to become a monk or a nun, तो उसमें भी many a times also, again I don't think that that is the true picture, because we have experienced nuns and a bit of that.
Mm,
मुझे लगता है कि उसमें भी ऐसा लगता है कि who one who becomes monk and a nun, it's like he is abandoning the material world, like shunning it, जो कि आई डोंट थिंक इट्स अ ट्रूथ. वन इज स्पेंडिंग टाइम टू परफेक्ट वन सेल्फ. तो शनिंग तो कहीं नजर आती नहीं है. वन ड्रॉप ऑफ पॉइजन लेस, वर्किंग ऑन योर सेल्फ.
yeah. So I'll just read this again. It is this revolt of spirit against matter that for 2000 years since Buddhism disturbed the balance of the old Aryan world has dominated increasingly the Indian mind. Not that the sense of the cosmic illusion is the whole of Indian thought. There are other philosophical statements, other religious aspirations. Nor has some attempt at an adjustment between the two terms been wanting even from the most extreme philosophies, but all have lived in the shadow of the great refusal, and the final end of life for all is the guard of the ascetic. यहाँ पे वो करें।
सो वही जो अभी मॉन्क, बीइंग अ मॉन्क, फॉर एग्जांपल, all have lived in the shadow of great refusal. एक्चुअली जैसे मदर कहती है ना, द मनी एंड पावर इज इन रॉन्ग हैंड्स, एंड फील्स लाइक ट्रू ऑल्सो, है ना, मतलब कि फॉर एग्जाम्पल वी, इफ वी आर डूइंग स्पिरिचुअल वर्क और running a monastery, so we would want only donations to happen. somehow वो एक आइडियोलॉजी तो सेट हो ही गई है ना कि आई डोंट वांट टू डू इट प्रोफेशनली, क्योंकि प्रोफेशन का नाम कल्प्रेट, मतलब जैसे ही प्रोफेशन आया इसका मतलब कुछ गड़बड़ है, क्लेवरनेस है, तो एज इफ आई हैव अबैंडन द क्लेवरनेस for wrong reasons, but maybe cleverness is required for the right reasons also, god knows, and money also, and the power also. So why to give all these positions to people who are very clever and manipulative? Why not to take up that positions, even those of us who may be spiritual oriented, है ना, जो भी है, तो वो कहाँ पे कहीं ना कहीं गल्फ तो क्रिएट है ही, जैसे मनी को नहीं टच करेंगे और पावर को नहीं टच करेंगे इफ यू आर ऑन दिस पाथ.
Should I read the next one, the general conception? The general conception of existence has been permeated with the Buddhist theory of the chain of karma and with the consequent antinomy of bondage and liberation, bondage by birth, liberation by cessation from birth. Therefore, all voices are joined in one great consensus that not in this world of the dualities can there be a kingdom of heaven, but beyond, whether in the joys of the eternal Vrindavan or the high beatitude of Brahmalok, beyond all manifestations, in some ineffable nirvana, or where all separate experience is lost in the featureless unity of the indefinable existence.
तो मतलब अगर सुख चाहिए, अगर अल्टीमेट आनंदा चाहिए, तो वो यहाँ तो नहीं मिलेगा, मतलब कुछ ऐसा परसेप्शन में क्रिएट हुआ हुआ है फॉर वॉट एवर रीजन्स, है ना. अगेन मतलब अगर जैसे मदर के वर्ड्स देखे, मदर सेज, यू नो, दिस समथिंग व्हिच आई हैव हियर ऑन द वॉल, दैट नेवर never back up yourself on anything material, or either person, life situation, because you'll always get disappointed. Now I personally relate this very much with the disenchantment that comes, है ना, बुद्धिज्म में जैसे disenchantment की बात करते हैं कि वहाँ एक्चुअली में नहीं मिलेगा. है ना, तो बट वही है कि उसको देख किस तरीके से रहे हो, तो उसको तुमने इस तरीके से देख लिया कि भाई यहाँ नहीं मिलेगा तो इसको छोड़ दो, है ना, तुम वहाँ जाओ जहाँ मिलेगा। बट एक्चुअली में ये कहा जा रहा है कि नो दैट द फुलनेस इज देयर इन यू, recognize that divinity in you, so that whatever works you do in the outer world, you can there offer yourself completely without any expectation, क्योंकि मुझे यहाँ से कोई डिमांड ही नहीं है, जो मुझे चाहिए था वो मुझे मिल गया या मिल रहा है, जो भी अंदर से बीइंग इन टच विद द सोर्स। और मेरे को कोई उम्मीद ही नहीं है कि मुझे, बिकॉज आई नो इट इज डिसअपॉइंटमेंट, सो समहाउ इट फॉर मी इट काइंड ऑफ रेजोनेट्स वेरी मच, जो मदर कह रही है और जो बुद्धिज्म कह रहा है। बट वो ये है कि उसको देख किस तरीके से लिया, उसको ऐसे कर दिया कि भाई क्योंकि यहाँ नहीं मिलेगा चलो इसको शन कर दो और तुम वहां जाओ जहाँ फॉरेस्ट में जहाँ मिलता है सब कुछ।
मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है जैसे वी वर टॉकिंग कि इंटीग्रल योगा फील्स अ लिटिल बिट के बियॉन्ड द रेगुलर कंसेप्शन एंड परसेप्शन। मे बी वो बुद्धिज्म और अ रेगुलर से Hindu, for example, came too fast. मतलब maybe it wasn't ready, and that's why probably Shankaracharya could have just said कि अच्छा रुक जाओ, है ना, छोड़ दो, कुछ नहीं है वो, अब वापस आ जाओ, इस पे तो फोकस कर लो, right? If we introduce a higher concept that a child is not understanding, we say, okay, forget it, है ना, first have you understood this? है ना, and then I mean of course like because there is so much similarities, I mean seems to be so much similarity between what mother has said and like you had said, na, mother had read the Dhampada quite intensively, so that I think this is the first thing that has made some logical sense to me about the shunning. Yeah, and I don't know why I needed to be
या
there
नहीं
and
हो
yeah,
सकता है, पता है मतलब क्यों नहीं हो
yeah,
सकता, बिल्कुल हो सकता है जो आप
yeah,
कह रहे हैं। मतलब कहीं ना कहीं कुछ मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग तो दिखती है, क्योंकि
yeah,
somehow maybe the way it has been portrayed earlier and now in contemporary Buddhism, maybe the way has changed, we don't know। बट जो अभी का जो लग रहा है कॉन्टेक्स्ट, उसमें कहीं ना कहीं भी मुझे तो वो दिख नहीं रहा दैट इट्स एंटी लाइफ,
yeah.
ना एंटी लाइफ तो नहीं लग रहा, सो देयर मस्ट बी समथिंग। अच्छा इसके बाद ख़त्म करते हैं, आई हैव टू अटेंड टू समथिंग एल्स, ये वाला पैराग्राफ करके ना।
नहीं, आई थिंक यहाँ पे मेरे को भी अभी थोड़ा सा वो शुरू हो रहा है।
अच्छा
वी कैन जस्ट या इसको आई थिंक नेक्स्ट टाइम ना विल टेक दिस अगेन फ्रॉम
ठीक है,
पेज 26 का जो एंड
ठीक
है,
है, ठीक है।
विल टेक दैट अगेन या।
6 का एंड मीन्स यहाँ यहाँ से ना,
हाँ,
ये कह
और
रहे हो
विद
ना।
जनरल कंसेप्शन, हाँ,
हाँ
यहाँ से ले लेंगे कि
या गॉट इट।
देखेंगे 26 लास्ट पैरा, तो हमें याद तो रहेगा ही।